everyone. With 12,000 children in the foster care system, we are in need of safe, supportive, and loving families for children more than ever. Today, we're going to bust 5 myths about children that are in foster care. Myth number 1, you have to have a lot of money to foster. Fact, you don't have to have a lot of money to be a foster parent. We just want to make sure that you and your family are financially stable. Myth number 2, you have to be married to be a foster parent. Fact, foster parents can be married or single, male or female. Myth number 3, when I foster a child, I'm on my own without any help. Fact, you are not alone as a foster parent. You have helpful agency staff here with CHS, as well as training to help prepare you for children coming into your home. Myth number 4, I can't be a foster parent. I get too attached when they leave. Fact, the truth is, yes, as a foster parent, you may get attached, but you have the opportunity as a foster parent to make a lasting difference in a child's life, no matter how long or short you are in their lives. Myth number 5, children in foster care aren't great kids. Fact, children in foster care are amazing kids. True, they have been through challenging, painful experiences, but with families like you who give them a loving, supportive environment, they can thrive. So now that you know the facts, I invite you to go to our website, chsnc.org/foster, to learn more about how you can be the difference in the life of a child.
Hi, my name is Aisha McCoy, Family Recruiter for Children's Home Society, and welcome to Family Talks, the series where families are able to share their journeys in fostering and adopting and bringing children home to permanent, safe, and loving families. Not only are we going to be talking with a family tonight, but you are also a part of this conversation, you, the viewer at home. Make sure if you have a question about foster care, adoption, or CHS, make sure to put your comments or questions there in the chat. Our recruiters are there to respond to you while you watch. A lot of families who are considering foster care often go between the question, okay, do I become a foster parent or do I become an adoptive parent? Both are important. Foster parents provide a safe and loving home while a permanent plan is being established for children. And of course, adoptive families provide a permanent home for children who parental rights have already been terminated and they're waiting for an adoptive home. So both foster parents and adoptive families are definitely needed. And today we're going to talk to a family who has experience with both fostering and adopting. I want everybody to meet Matthew Nederlanden and Micah Shearer. How are you guys doing?
Hey.
Great.
You guys have a busy house. I got a chance to meet the baby of the crew there. And so you were telling me before we got on camera that you guys have children from the ages of 6 months to 6 years old, right?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Oh
we've got 5 in the home right now, from 6 to 6 months.
Wow. Yeah, that's a busy house right there, from baby to now, of course, with the pandemic, having to help the child with their online school and, that sort of thing. So I'm sure, there's never a dull moment there in the home.
Definitely not.
No. Okay. So I want to talk with you guys. Like I said, you guys have experience in both fostering and adopting. So your perspective is definitely helpful. And thank you guys again for joining me.
Well, we actually, why don't you tell it?
Yeah, we met on a dating website, and the thing that I filtered in order to get the results that had Micah in it was that I wanted somebody who was interested in adopting. And so that was always something very valuable for me, something that I valued a lot, something that I really wanted to have in a partner. And that's how we met.
I didn't actually know that I think we're actually married before you told me that.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, that's definitely a way to filter and find the right partner who has the right intentions. So I love that. So what kind of made you really want to become a foster or adopted parent, Matthew?
So I have a cousin who is adopted, and for a while, we thought he was going to be adopted by my family. Ended up being adopted by my aunt, and I had pretty good experiences with that, and really enjoyed a family being built that way. For me, I really wanted to be able to go where there was a need, and be able to build a family for children that didn't have a safe place to land or weren't wanted, or whatever way that you want to think about that, depending on what you're considering.
Yeah, and since adoption sort of was the love connection for you guys, for you, Micah, why did you feel that adoption was something that you wanted to do?
Yeah, I also have sort of grew up with adoption as part of my story and part of my family. I have 2 younger siblings who are both adopted. So that was always just a way that you have a family. And I wasn't particularly, I grew up in a really big family. I've always loved kids, but wasn't particularly inclined towards children being biologically mine, if that makes sense. And I had this example and this experience growing up of that not mattering and not really being an important distinction, if that makes sense. And I spent about 6 years in DC running after school programs as well, and got to really be just really involved with families' lives and really a part of sort of coming alongside families that really struggled with a lot of the same things the kids that have come in and out of our home have struggled with. So I think those sort of 2 experiences kind of set the stage for when we, decided that we were actually ready to add kids to our household. Kind of led us into fostering.
Wow. Yeah. So, from both of you guys' experiences, you got to see that, biology doesn't necessarily make families. And, you're able to, help children who, are lacking that and give them that love and that foundation. So that is awesome. And I'm glad that was, the connection that brought you guys together. So
yeah. We kind of did things backwards, to be honest, because I knew we wanted to adopt. That was kind of the starting place. And I knew both of my sisters are adopted from China, so they're with international adoptions. And I knew that I wanted to focus domestic and local. And so I knew a home study was the thing you did. So I went and found a random agency and got a home study. And then we were like, oh, okay, now we have to actually find an agency to do an adoption. So we went to a few information sessions and that's when I sort of slowly started to parse the difference between like private infant adoption and foster care and foster adoption, which is a whole other thing. And as Matt said earlier, sort of wanting to go where the need was. What we sort of through that journey kind of ended up with foster care because we felt like it's sort of the intersection of what we felt like was the greatest need that we were also equipped to meet, because I'm sure there's even greater needs that are just, I can say no, I'm just saying. So I think there was a little bit of just kind of like taking one piece at a time and sort of feeling our way through it. I don't know that for me there was any big like surprises when it came down to the licensing process, because it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of sort of steps you jump through. But I've gotten us an SBA loan before, and I feel like it's about on par. Applying for a small business administration loan and getting licensed for foster care, it's about the same amount of paperwork. Similar skill sets.
Oh, wow.
It all kind of looks the same.
Yeah. And that paperwork and, what you have to go through, of course, we want to make sure that we're finding, the right family. So I'm glad that you guys, bared that and, got through that so that you can get to the good part, because now you guys are at the good part.
One of the things that jumps out at me is actually something our placement worker said right after getting licensed. Shout out to Michelle. She's awesome. She said something about families for children, not children for families. And that has always kind of stuck in my head. It's important to know your limits. It's important to be clear with yourself about like what is good self-care, and not taking on something that is gonna, recognizing your, probably the right way to say it. At the same time, it's not about the parents, it is about the kids. And you're not gonna know everything they walk in the door with. Nobody does most of the time. Sometimes it can be, frustrating when somebody calls you and they say, no behavior problems whatsoever. Hi, babe.
Somebody has a lot to say. She has a lot to say.
She does. We got the call for her, and they said, oh, she's no health problems at all. She just has a G-tube. And I'm going, so I asked, like, okay, so why does she have a G-tube? No problems at all. She just has a G-tube. And she's got her share of things. And I kind of knew that when we said yes. I knew it wasn't the whole story. I knew I didn't have the whole story. But sometimes you just have to say yes and have an open mind and roll with it a little bit. Oh God, we had no idea what we were doing. Or we didn't feel like we knew what we were doing. They were 2 years old and 8 months, little boys. They were scared and worried and had been in 4 different places in the last week. I think we were all a little shell-shocked for the first few days. I was interviewing for hiring somebody at work, and they dropped the boys off at 11. I ran to work and did a couple interviews because we actually lived and worked at the same place at the time. Came back and realized I'd spent the entire afternoon with spit up all down my shirt, like middle of these job interviews, and nobody had told me. So at that point, I felt like I was a parent, like it was official. Yeah, I would say for me, it was honestly the thing that made me the most nervous at first. I didn't feel like I understood it. I was scared. How are these parents going to react? I have their kids, kind of a set of feelings. And I think we did a really good job of it with our first placement. Mom and Dad were really open and generally very, very warm, actually. Kind of treated us a little bit like babysitters, which was a little odd, but it meant that it was a very, very cordial interaction. But I don't think it was until our second placement that I connected with it a little bit more, if that makes sense. So that was our now 6-year-old, she was 4. And just how deeply she missed her parents, how much she wanted and frankly still wants the life that she imagines with them. It's not always exactly what it really was, but what she imagines it was is something that she misses. And it's a bittersweet thing, the transition from her being in foster care to her being adopted, because it's also a lot of grief of letting go of that possibility of her family being able to be reunited. But her connection to her parents just felt like something that needed to be honored and needed to be space needed to be made for it, if that makes sense. I'm also a very heavy boundary person. I like my boundaries. I'm not the mom that says call me anytime. I barely answer phone calls from my family sometimes. So I had to set up some ways of communication that would work for me, but would still be open. We sort of landed on, I have a Google photo album and I have a Google Voice number that can be texted and emailed. And when it's working really well, both sets of us and the kids' parents can upload photographs. So I get to see pictures from visits and things they've done. They get to see just sort of everyday life. And I think that's been a really good safe medium.
We also made books, Micah made them, with pictures of their life before us and after, that they can look at any time, be reminded of. And then we also gave that, one to the bio parents as well, so have a physical reminder.
And we were able to do that because parents shared pictures with us from before they came into care. Sorry.
And I'll talk about shared parenting post-adoption. It's really important to me that when you adopt a kid, you're not dealing with a blank slate. You shouldn't be taking their identity away. So one of the decisions that we did was to not change their name. And so, we have 5 different last names in the house, and that's okay.
I also refuse to change mine.
Right.
So.
I have a very long, complicated name. That's okay. That people don't want to use it.
And he wouldn't take mine.
Yeah.
So.
And we wanted them to be able to retain their identities. And we go and when the bio parent is safe, which, isn't always the case, but when possible, when they're safe, we try and make sure that they are continuing to be in their lives, that they can see them. We do visits even after the adoption, when they're no longer in foster care. We want them to be able to know who their parents are. They want them to be able to know who they are and not take their identity away or not take their history away. One of the things that often happens, and it's kind of a little bit of a story of someone who's adopted, is going on this search to find their bio parents when they, come of age. And we wanted to have that not be anything that's a surprise. We want you to see your bio parents, a couple times a year, every year of your life, as long as your parents are, continuing to act in a way that is safe and responsible and not harmful to the child. So we don't want to take that away. And we also didn't want to take away, their identity by changing their names. But we also gave them language like, they call me Matt, and, they'll call their dad, John, if John was their name. And they do the same thing with Mama Micah, or Mama Jane. So, we try and give them sort of that language to be able to talk about all the people that love them in their life.
I mean, the other thing I would say about shared parenting is it's a little bit different with every placement that we've had. The dynamics are a little bit different. The relationship between the kids and the parents is a little bit different. And we've had to just be kind of flexible and feel it out with each relationship and sort of let that evolve. It's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to feel like it's a bit daunting at first. At the end of the day, these parents are just people as well. And a lot of the time, they're just grateful to know that somebody's loving their kids and that their kids are safe. So if you sort of start with some openness, I think you can be surprised with what it's met with. It doesn't mean that you ignore all the stuff that is going on, or that you don't have healthy boundaries, because you absolutely will need them. But there's something really special about being able to connect, at least around the kids, because you have something so precious and so amazing in common. Even these parents who, they've got all this stuff going on, but the vast majority of these parents love their kids. They may not know how to do it well, and they may not even be able to do it well ever, or at least in the near term. They still love their kids.
Right.
I feel like the time where I did shared parenting best was the first placement that we had, really empathizing with this couple that just had their kids removed, and being able to the first thing that I said to them was, this has to be incredibly difficult, and we want to be here to support you as well. I think leaning into your role as a foster parent is important. Your role is not to fix the bio parents. Your role is not to figure out if they're safe or not. Your role is to love the kids, and that's enough. That's the whole of it. And so take care of them, make sure they're safe, love them. And part of that is recognizing that their previous relationships had meaning, both for the children and for the adults. And embracing that meaning deserves your mercy.
The biggest change for me was my appreciation of shared parenting, and I'm such a boundary person, and I value my boundaries, and I will protect and defend them. So I think because of that, that was the thing that made me the most nervous. And you know, if I could go back and tell myself it's going to be okay. And also there's something particularly special about being able to almost bond over your shared love of the kid. Nothing else in common, but you love this kid. And in that moment when you realize that both of you have that in common, and that's incredibly powerful. Knowing that going in would have eased my mind, I think, and encouraged me a little bit.
We've heard a lot of talk about like the phrase foster to adopt. And I think it can be really confusing. You know, a lot of people hear it as like, I foster in order to adopt. That's not the way that I heard it. I heard it as like, I'm okay with a range of outcomes from foster and then they go back to adopt. You know, I'm okay from foster to adopt, like a string. So I think that can be kind of confusing and, you know, can make it so that two people are using the same words and not meaning the same things.
I'm sure you've run into it. It's kind of a charged phrase in a lot of circles, the foster to adopt phrase.
Yes, I as a recruiter, I do get a lot of calls about, you know, I want to foster to adopt. I want to foster to adopt. And, you know, that's something that at CHS, we don't necessarily like to use because yes, when you foster a child, it's not a guarantee that you're going to adopt, that's going to happen. And really, you know, as a foster parent, you get the opportunity to be a champion for permanency. You get to make sure that children get home, whether home means that you go with birth family, whether home means that, you know, you possibly are, you know, have a kinship placement with a relative, or whether home means that you as the adoptive family get to be their home. So that's what we really need. And you know, and by you saying that just kind of gave me a light bulb as far as what the main idea of this interview will be is foster to adopt, ? Like, I love that. Foster to adopt, I love that as the main idea for me.
If you think about it like a sequence, you know, I'm going to foster in order to adopt, but you can also think about it like a string, like I'm okay with a series of outcomes in between foster to adopt. And I think that second way is the way that, you know, that we think about it, that, you know, that we're here to give the child permanency and a safe place to land, whatever way that looks like. Because moving them again is traumatic. They already had one trauma of being ripped from the people who they know and who they love. Let's not have them do it a second time. But if they can safely go back to the first one, that's even better for the kid.
Yeah.
It's all about making the kid's life better, you know? I mean, we ended up with a family through this, and we love the fact that we got a family through this. But at the end of the day, we did this because we want to improve those children's lives, whichever way that makes the most sense for them. Yes. Therapist every time. Every time. It doesn't matter if your kid is, you know, coming from a situation that has no trauma in it whatsoever. The fact that they got removed from a house previously, get them involved with a therapist. It doesn't matter if they're old, doesn't matter if they're young, doesn't matter if they're acting out, doesn't matter if they're super well behaved. What they're going through is incredibly difficult. Get them a therapist right off the bat. You know, you should be able to get that for free through the system. It should just take you some time, but do it for every single kid right off the bat.
It's not going to be easy. It's definitely one of the most challenging things I think I've ever done. Probably that's how most parents feel on some level as well, because being a parent is just hard. And then you add all the different layers that go with this. But it's also incredible, and it's probably one of the most impactful things you can ever do. Even if a kid's just with you for a few months, giving them a place where they are safe, where they are loved, where they're given space to just be who they are. without pressure and expectation. Like, you don't have to call me mom. You don't have to even really like me. Giving them a place to land where they are safe and appreciated is invaluable. And a lot of kids don't have it. So if you've got it in you to sort of go into it with no expectations other than loving the kids, do it.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your story, Matthew and Micah. Definitely was great to hear, your experiences as far as shared parenting goes, and also get some clarification. We hear a lot of times the term foster to adopt, thrown around, but it's important for people to realize that, as a foster family, you have the opportunity to be a champion for permanency. No matter what home looks like for a child, you can help them get there. And so if you, the viewer, are watching and this is something that you're interested in, our recruiters are still there in the chat answering any questions that you have. So make sure to chat with them. If you're watching this right now and you're ready to take that first step, make sure to go to our website, chsnc.org/apply, to complete the application. Again, thank you guys so much for sharing your story. My name is Aisha McCoy, and this has been Family Talks. See you later.
Are you interested in becoming a foster or adoptive parent? Our website, chsnc.org/foster, is the place to begin your journey to grow your family. Find answers to frequently asked questions about foster care and adoption. Still have questions? RSVP for an information meeting to learn more about our agency, the licensing process, and answer any questions that you have. Ready to get started? Click the Get Started button to take the first step and complete an application.